First up is Nathan, and yeah, this is looking good. Looks like you departed from the tutorials, which is okay, but I would say that you definitely could use some bevels here, like for example on these edges. See how that shift right mouse click. Where's bevel? Whoops. Bevel. Maybe a couple more segments. You know, something like that. And then for the rest of those, you know, really actually you should just pick all the edges at once around the whole thing and do it as one big bevel. And then on the other side as well, like along this edge. I like this kind of rounded piece here, though. That looks good that you've done that as continuous shape. I mean, you don't have that seam there, but that's a nice touch. I think this is okay. You'll notice that you have this sort of faceted edge look here, but if you take these, if you select those edges and then shift right mouse click, soften, harden, soften. If you compare this one to its neighbors, see how those look faceted and this one looks smooth? Yeah, there's something. Oh, that looks alright, but I think you didn't get these kind of round things in there, and also for this top thing, you didn't get those kind of ripples in there. So I would add that, and yeah, and then again beveling on all of these shapes. I think you would have had an easier time if you built the feet as a separate cube rather than one continuous surface. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty good. And yeah, you did this in your own way, which is okay. Although I think that the kind of the ridges are very subtle. You can almost miss them. You know, if you don't look at it. If you look at it straight on, you can barely even tell they're there. So I think those need to be a little deeper. I mean, here from this angle, you can see them a lot better. But I think they could be deeper. And then again, you know, bevel here, bevels here. So bevels all around, I think is a lot of what's needed. You know, the arms on this thing, that, but also the ripples on that as well. So yeah, good work. Next up is Jesse, and there was a little trick to open this because you had it saved as .ma, but actually it was my MB file. So if you do save as, you have an option here of my ASCII or my binary, and so that's what, you know. See, if I change that, it changes it to MB. If I change that, it changes it to MA. So that's how you change it. Just changing the extension is just gonna mess it up and make it so I can't open it. So I think you've done a good job. I just think this is all too thin. I think I mentioned that in the last critique. Yeah, like the feet are a little too thick. But all of this looks really good. Nice clean work here and here, this thing. Good bevels. Yeah, the arms look good. All of these shapes are looking nice. So yeah, I think all around this looks good. I just think that looks, to me, that looks too thin. Again, we can only see it from the front, so you can't really know by looking at it, but I would tend to say that the head's probably more like a cube shape, so probably twice as thick, and the body's probably much thicker. But yeah, overall this is good, clean work. This is Candace, and yeah, it's looking good. I would say that there's some little proportion issues. Also, I'd get a bevel on this guy if we did this and that, and that, 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 and that, like so. Oh, and that. Probably these. Oops. Okay, and then shift right mouse click, bevel, and just holding down Control, I'll decrease that, but maybe increase the segments 1 or 2. Something like that. That looks a little nicer, right? Also, it looks like these are a little uneven, so kind of fix the spacing on those. This looks good. Those look good. This top thing, that looks a little squished to me. I might kind of sort that out a bit. I feel like the arms are on the thick side this way. I feel like this could be a little thinner, and I think the difference between this thickness and that is probably a bit too big. Also, I would bevel these as well, these pieces, that you don't want that sharp edge there. And yeah, and I would probably say that these are too thick. I might just grab the verts along the bottom and move those up, and probably move the whole thing back down. Now the legs maybe look a little short. Maybe you want the legs a little longer. So yeah, I think the legs could be longer, but those feet were definitely too kind of thick in the vertical direction. But overall, yeah, it's a good job. Oh yeah, and maybe these could be a little bit taller. Just selecting all these. Maybe a little more like that. And then I would also say, bevel these guys as well. So shift right mouse click, bevel edge, decrease this a bunch, something like that. It's nicer. So yeah, a few little touches, but overall this is good. Okay, this is Natalie, and yeah, I think this is looking good overall. I think you're missing the sort of round kind of hand piece, because you have like the shoulder, elbow, wrist, but not the kind of hand thing on the ends, which I believe I used pipe for that, the pipe primitive. And I guess you're missing this little switch thing in the middle here. And then some bevels that you could bevel this and maybe bevel this, and I think the feet look a little, maybe a little, yeah, probably a little too wide. And you do have one bevel on here, but you're missing the other bevel to kind of round out the front. Also, yeah, I don't think I would have, yeah, so for this, I'm going to remove this bevel, do Control A for the attribute editor, select the bevel, then tab, and then hit select, and then hit delete. See, it turns it back into a cube. And so I think the first thing, I believe we wanted to do this first, right? These four. Shift right mouse click, whoops, bevel edge, yeah. Make that nice and big. Oops, not quite that big, but pretty big. Lots of segments. Maybe even bigger. So that gets that rounded front. Then we'll take that top edge, double click on that. Oh, it doesn't want to double click. Why? Probably. Just select these and then Control select those. So I just got that top edge. Shift right mouse click, bevel edge. Increase the segments. Maybe decrease this a little bit. So, and then just sort of compare those side by side. I think, well, it probably wasn't long enough to begin with, but maybe a little flatter and longer. But I think, you get a sense how that process of those bevels ends up making a nicer shape than this. And you can see how this is not rounded as it goes underneath. It's rounded on top and then it just goes straight down. But this is rounded on the bottom as well. So you can fix those. And but yeah, overall, oh, and it looks like you didn't get the kind of ripple thing in there either. So yeah, so a few touches to fix up, but you got, some basically got all the basic stuff looking good. Alright, this is Kay, and yeah, overall this is looking pretty good. I think, yeah, we ended up with an issue here because, let me find one, and hopefully it still has a history on it. Yeah. So what I think you've done is, I'm pretty sure you've done, is you just selected the whole surface and beveled everything, and you did not want to do that. So I'm going to get rid of that bevel. I'll go into the attributor, click on the bevel tab, hit the select button, and then hit delete, and that makes it into the cylinder again. And so what you did is I believe, is you selected, I'll just show you, select the whole thing and then did bevel on that. It doesn't want to give it to me here. Mesh, where's it? Edit mesh, bevel. And so that's, oh, that actually didn't do that. Oh, okay, it kind of did. But anyways, what you want to do instead is to just select these sides only, shift right mouse click bevel edge, and add some segments and decrease this fraction, to eyeball it as well. And see the difference between that, it's real smooth in the front, and this with all these little extra surfaces, all these extra edges, all the way around. So, yeah, I would go back and, you can redo that. Looks like you did okay here. But yeah, you did, again, you're selecting the whole object when you're beveling and not the proper edges. That's fine for this cube because you actually did want to bevel everything. But for things that you don't want to bevel everything, that's not so good. But it looks like you did that right here where you only did the top and the front. For this one, I would say maybe that you could just go a little further on the size of this. And then on this one as well. To get a little more rounded. Although I would say the whole thing is maybe a little thick. I might bring up the bottom of that. Although then you probably want to move it down. But I'm just showing you to get a sense of the size because I think that this is too tall, and to me that looks a little bit more like that foot. So yeah, fixing the bevels on those. Yeah, it looks like same issue here. That looks fine, but again, that's the whole object being beveled and not certain select edges. This looks good though, I believe. Although I think you missed this edge when you did it. Yeah, and then again, same issue here. That again, it didn't really, the shape looks fine, but you didn't really need all these extra edges like on each of those. So again, be careful about selecting the appropriate edges and don't necessarily bevel the whole thing. So that's the main message here, is pick the appropriate edges when you bevel. But overall, it's looking good. This is Julia, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. I think there's some little bit of proportion issues. I think you went a little narrow on this compared to the thickness of these joints. You can see here it's just only a little bit thinner, those kind of segments, the arm segments versus the joints, but your joints are at least twice as big, maybe more so. And I think that we have the same issue here that I saw in the last one, where do we have one that still has history on it? Doesn't look like it. So we can't adjust those now, but yeah, and then here too. So I think that let's just do an example. I'll just do this as an example. If I hold down E, I can do, and left mouse, I can do discrete rotate, and I'll just snap. So what you did is this, or some version of that, where, yeah, so you got something like that, which is why these look like so. And I'm going to undo that. What you want to do is just select these edges. I'm just double clicking, and shift right mouse click bevel edge and adjust the segments and the fraction here. And you see how I don't have all those extra edges for here, whereas these do. They have all those extra edges. So You just need to be careful about what you pick. And here I'm not exactly sure what you did. I'm wondering if you started out with a cylinder instead of a cube for the foot, and also you beveled the bottom, which I don't think it needs to be. But yeah, again, for this one, what we want to do is I'm just going to do a quick one. Let's just say something like that. And so first, we're going to select these two and those two, so we have those four corners. Shift right mouse click bevel edge. Make that nice and big, actually. Send segments to round it. And then we'll take these edges along the top. I'm going to deselect the ones on the side, so I just have the ones on the top there. And shift right mouse click bevel edge again. Maybe a little less there, but more segments. So that's how I got that kind of foot shape. So, and then compare that with what we have here, which I think maybe you took a cylinder and then scaled it up and then beveled it, I'm guessing, sort of looks like. Not sure. But anyway, try to get something more like that. Yeah, but this looks, yeah, again, this is fine, except you don't need all those extra edges, so it would be better if you carefully selected the edges that you want to bevel rather than just beveling the whole object. This one would have benefited from a little more segments. And this looks a little flat to me. I might kind of scale that out a bit. But yeah, I mean, you've got all the basic stuff there. I think a few fixes with the bevels, and it would be a bit nicer. This one could use some, and again, you have to go through and very carefully select all the edges you want to bevel, and not just bevel everything, but that could look better with beveled edges as well. Next up is William, and yeah, overall it's looking good. I think you want to look out for the soften hardened edges. So soften hardened edges, soften edge. And now take a look at this one compared to, say, that one. You see the difference, how smooth this looks versus that one? So you want to soften edges on those. I don't know how it ended up getting hardened, but you can see how that looks better than this one, where you see the faceted edge. It's funny because your proportions, like, things look a little big compared to, like, look at the size of the eyes compared to these eyes. But what it does is it makes it look like a cute kid robot, which I kind of like, actually. So, but you'll see how the proportions are different. How these eyes really fill up the face versus these have a lot more space around them. And I think that on here, these pieces are much narrower than the gaps in between. But on yours, the thickness of this is almost the same as the gap. So it ends up being a different look, although it kind of works. So yeah, the soften edge thing. In this case, the thing here is actually you'd probably want to leave this bottom edge hard. So for example, if I shift right mouse click, soften, see it does that weird thing to the bottom. So instead, I would pick the edges of everything but that bottom edge, and then soften that. Whoops. Wrong thing. And then take a look at that. So that looks better. Oh, something's a little funny. Yeah, I think maybe you went a bit too far on these. Do we? Oh, we still have these. That'd be probably this one. Maybe I can go down a little bit on this. Just a little. To get rid of that kind of funny thing that was happening in the front. And yeah, so mostly softening edges, and again, your proportions are different, but in a way that's, like I said, it makes it look like a kid, which is kind of cute. But hopefully you can see, if you look side by side, you can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, good work on this. Next up is Shansu, and I was not able to open your file. So if you could just resave that out, and we'll take a look at it. It looks, just from here, a quick look, looks pretty good. I think the feet look a little short. I think they can be extended in the sort of X direction here. but overall it looks good from there. But I'd love to be able to open the file, so resave it out. When you're in Maya, just make sure to try to do File, Save Scene As, and then choose Maya ASCII here, and then save that as, give it a new name or something, and then upload that, and I can review the model. Next up is Warren, and yeah, this looks good. Might argue that these are a little bit thick in that direction, but it looks like he did all the bevel stuff right, and this looks good, those looks good. I might not have beveled these edges, because then we ended up seeing the kind of rounded corners of those, but that, in here obviously it's a seamless surface, but I don't think we wanted to see those rounded bits. I mean, of course, if you sort of scaled it further, you could hide those, but probably didn't need to bevel them. Yeah, this top thing is looking a little tall to me, maybe. Could probably just scooch it down a bit. Yeah, again, maybe this size of this is looking a little maybe tall compared to his head. But those are just little fine points. I think overall you've done well. Nice work. This is Anton, and yeah, looking really good. I think you've got all the pieces there. I'd probably say that these are going to be maybe a little narrower, but I think definitely longer in this direction. You could just take like the verts of the front and just move them forward, and that way you don't sort of mess up the shape of the bevels by scaling the whole thing. And then same here, I could sort of move those in and then recenter this. And I think that is a little bit more the shape we're going for than this one. Yeah, I would say that these pieces look a bit small as far as width compared to those, because I think it's not so different. But that's, again, kind of a fine point. I think you've got all the different pieces and all the bevels going on nicely, so this might be a little thick, but it's alright. Yeah, I think overall this one looks good. Looks like a good, clean model. Nice work. Okay, next up is Shelly, and yeah, I think the detail you've got here is looking good. You might want to select these edges and bevel them like those, that, this one, and these, and these, and then shift right mouse click, bevel edge, decrease the fraction, increase the segments, something like that. Looks a little better. And then yeah, same with these. Compare that to that sharp edge. So some more beveling. And then obviously the big thing that's missing is all the detail on the sort of chest here. So it looks like it's not quite finished yet. So yeah, we want to see all these pieces and this dial thing here and these areas and that. So also these feet look very thick in this direction, and so I might flatten those out, and they could probably be a little longer in that direction as well. But yeah, the main thing is missing the all the chest detail. So yeah, if you want to keep going on that, that'd be a good idea. Finish it up. This is Yijin. Yeah, I think this is looking good. Looks like you've got most of the detail. I think maybe this is sticking out a little bit far. Might kind of push that in a bit. And this is looking a bit flat to me. I imagine that'd be a little kind of thicker there. You kind of flatten the front of those. That's interesting. That looks good. Yeah, that looks nice. Looks like you did some good bevels and all this stuff. Yeah, I think all around this looks good. I think I've done a nice job. Not too much to fix here. Maybe a little bit more rounded on the front of these if you kind of decrease this or increase that a little bit more. I kind of like that look more than this one when I, compare it to these. But yeah, overall, good work. Next up is Lupe, and one thing is you need to turn in your My file, which we don't have here, so make sure you're saving and turning in your My file. But from what I can tell from this, you're missing quite a lot of the pieces, and you haven't done any beveling yet. So yeah, if you want to kind of continue, make sure you're following the video closely. And make sure you add all the detail and put in the bevels and turn in your Maya scene file, and we can give you more credit for that work. But as you can see in the description, it tells you it says you have to turn in a Maya file. So that's the the .ma file. So when you're in Maya, if you save scene as and then choose Maya ASCII, it'll be a .ma file, and you want to save that and make sure you upload that to the discussion so I can open it up and take a look. But what I would say is kind of review those videos and make sure you've added all the details and the bevels and stuff, because it looks like you're missing quite a lot.